3 days before Marcus got out of the hospital, I did something I never thought I'd be capable of. I went to the pet store and bought 2 identical bowls, the exact same brand and color as Princess's regular dish. The sound that woke me wasn't Princess meowing for her morning treats. It was a thud, followed by something that sounded like choking. I grabbed my robe and rushed to the kitchen, my heart already pounding because something felt terribly wrong. What I found there will haunt me for the rest of my life. My son Marcus was sprawled on my kitchen floor, his body convulsing, white foam bubbling from his mouth. His eyes were rolled back, and that horrible gurgling sound was coming from his throat. Next to him was Princess's food bowl, completely empty, and an overturned container of her special cat food scattered across the linoleum. I screamed. I actually screamed so loud that Mrs. Johnson next door later told me she heard it through her closed windows. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. But somehow I managed to get the words out. "My son, he's unconscious. There's foam. Please hurry." The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it felt like hours. They immediately started working on Marcus, asking me rapid-fire questions I couldn't answer. What did he eat? When did I find him? Did he have any medical conditions? All I could do was stand there in my nightgown, clutching Princess to my chest, watching them pump my baby's stomach, right there on my kitchen floor. "Ma'am, we need to know what he ingested," one of the paramedics said urgently. "This looks like poisoning." Poisoning. The word hit me like a physical blow. I looked down at the empty cat food container, then at Princess in my arms, and something cold settled in my stomach. "He was feeding my cat," I whispered. "He always insists on feeding my cat when he visits." But as they loaded Marcus into the ambulance, his face gray and lifeless, a horrible thought began creeping into my mind. Princess had been sick for weeks, lethargic, barely eating, hiding in corners. And Marcus had been the one bringing her special food, the one insisting on preparing her meals. He'd been so concerned about her health, so helpful with her care. The paramedics' words echoed in my head. "This looks like poisoning. Hey, beautiful soul." Before we dive in, show some love with a like, tap subscribe, and tell me, where in this big, beautiful world are you watching from? Standing in my kitchen after the ambulance pulled away, I stared at that empty food bowl and felt my world tilt sideways. The son I'd raised, the boy who used to help me grade papers and bring me flowers on Mother's Day, the man who'd been my rock since James passed away 3 years ago. Had he been poisoning my cat? Had he somehow accidentally eaten the very poison he'd been feeding to Princess? The irony was so twisted, so unthinkable, that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I sank into my kitchen chair, Princess purring in my lap, and tried to process what seemed impossible. My son, my devoted son, who visited twice a week and worried about my living alone, might have been slowly killing the one thing that brought me joy. And if that empty bowl meant what I thought it meant, then God help me, he'd just poisoned himself instead. 3 years ago, when James collapsed in our front yard while watering his prized tomato plants, I thought my world had ended. 42 years of marriage, gone in an instant. The man who brought me coffee every morning, who still held my hand during evening prayers, who called me his beautiful Dot, even when my hair went completely gray. The stroke took him so fast, the doctor said he never felt any pain. But I felt enough pain for both of us. The months after James's funeral were the darkest of my life. I'd wake up reaching for him, forgetting for just a moment that his side of the bed would be cold forever. The house felt like a tomb. Every corner held memories. Every room echoed with his laughter. I stopped cooking real meals, stopped answering the phone, stopped caring about anything at all. That's when Marcus stepped up in ways that made my heart swell with pride. My boy, who'd always been busy with his insurance business and his own family, suddenly became my lifeline. He started showing up twice a week with groceries, sitting with me while I cried, helping me sort through James's belongings when I was ready. He'd find me in my pajamas at 3 in the afternoon and gently coax me to get dressed, to eat something, to keep living. "Mama, Daddy wouldn't want you wasting away like this," he'd say, his voice so gentle and full of love. He'd want you to take care of yourself. Marcus had always been a good son, but during those terrible months, he became everything I needed. He handled the insurance paperwork, helped me navigate Social Security benefits, and even started managing my finances when I couldn't focus on numbers anymore. I was so grateful. Here was this busy man with his own problems, his own family to support, and he was sacrificing his time to take care of his grieving mother. 6 months after James passed, Marcus surprised me with a trip to the animal shelter. "You need some company in that big house, Mama," he said. "Something to take care of, something to love." That's where I met Princess, a 3-year-old calico with the most expressive green eyes I'd ever seen. She'd been returned twice by other families, labeled as antisocial and difficult. But when I sat in that little room and she climbed right into my lap, I knew she was meant to be mine. Princess became my salvation. She had this way of appearing exactly when I needed her most, curling up beside me when the loneliness felt overwhelming, purring against my chest when I cried. James had always loved cats, and I swear sometimes I'd catch Princess staring at his empty recliner, like she could see him sitting there, smiling at us both. Marcus seemed thrilled about Princess at first. He'd bring her little toys, ask about her health, even offered to help with vet visits. "I'm so glad you have her, Mama," he'd say. "She's good for you." And she was. For the first time since James died, I had a reason to get up in the morning. Someone who depended on me. Someone who made the house feel less empty. My son had saved me from drowning in grief, and Princess had taught me how to live again. Between Marcus's devotion and Princess's unconditional love, I started to believe I might actually be okay. I started looking forward to Marcus's visits, to the way he'd light up when he saw Princess greeting him at the door. I trusted him completely. With my spare key, with my finances, with my heart. Marcus was my protector, my anchor, the man who'd inherited his father's gentle spirit and determination to take care of family. How could I have known that the son I loved so deeply, who'd pulled me from the depths of despair, would become the very person trying to push me back into darkness? The first comment that made my stomach twist came about 2 months ago, during one of Marcus's regular visits. I was refilling Princess's food bowl when he shook his head and sighed. "Mama, you know you're spending more on that cat's food than some people spend feeding their kids, right?" I laughed it off, telling him that Princess deserved the best, but something in his tone felt different, sharper, less like the gentle teasing I was used to, and more like genuine irritation. When I mentioned that Princess had been to the vet twice that month for some stomach issues, Marcus's jaw tightened. "Maybe it's time to face facts, Mama. She's getting old, and these vet bills are just going to keep piling up. You're living on a fixed income now." Fixed income. The way he said it made me feel like a burden, like I was being irresponsible with money that wasn't really mine to spend. But it was my money, my pension, my savings that James and I had worked 42 years to build. Still, the comment planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't shake. The suggestions about moving started small. Marcus would walk through my house and point out things that needed fixing. "That front step is getting loose, Mama, and look at this wallpaper peeling in the hallway." He'd shake his head like he was genuinely concerned for my safety. "This house is just getting to be too much for you. You know Keisha and I would love to have you come stay with us." At first, it felt like love. My son wanting to take care of me, wanting me close. But then he started getting more specific about the financial benefits. "Think about it, Mama. No more mortgage, no more utilities, no more maintenance costs. You could save thousands every year." He'd pause, then add with a smile. "And we could take care of Princess too. The kids would love having a pet." But Princess had been acting strange lately, and that worried me more than any loose front step. My usually playful, affectionate cat was becoming increasingly lethargic. She'd sleep for hours in spots she'd never chosen before, tucked away in dark corners like she was trying to hide. Her appetite had dropped dramatically, and some days I'd find her food bowl barely touched. The vet visits became more frequent and more expensive. Dr. Martinez ran test after test, but everything came back normal. "Sometimes older cats just slow down," she'd say. But Princess wasn't that old. She was only 8, and she'd been so vibrant just a few months earlier. That's when Marcus started insisting on helping with Princess's care. "You've got enough to worry about, Mama, and let me handle feeding her." He'd bring special food, expensive brands that he claimed would be better for her sensitive stomach. "The lady at the pet store said this would help with her appetite," he'd explain, holding up containers of food I'd never seen before. I appreciated his help, but something felt off about how controlling he became around Princess's routine. He'd arrive early sometimes, letting himself in with his key, and I'd find him in the kitchen, already preparing her food. When I tried to help, he'd wave me away. "I've got it, Mama. You just relax." The phone calls started getting screened too. Marcus would answer when my church friends called, telling them I was resting or not feeling well today. When I asked about it, he'd look concerned. "Mama, you need to be careful. There are so many scammers targeting seniors these days." "I'm just protecting you." Sister Williams from church mentioned that she'd tried calling several times, but Marcus kept saying I was unavailable. "Dorothy, honey, we miss you at Bible study," she said, when she finally caught me at the grocery store. "Marcus says you're not feeling up to coming anymore." But I hadn't said that. I'd been wondering why no one was calling, why my social calendar had become so empty. When I confronted Marcus about it, he looked hurt. "I'm just trying to help, Mama. You said yourself that you get tired easily these days." Had I said that? I couldn't remember. The grief and loneliness had made so many days blur together. Maybe I had complained about being tired. Maybe I was becoming the burden Marcus seemed to think I was. Princess grew weaker, and the house grew quieter. And I started to wonder if Marcus was right about everything. The paramedics left behind a mess that told a story I didn't want to believe. While they worked on Marcus, I'd stood frozen in my nightgown. But now, in the terrible silence of my kitchen, I could finally see what had been right in front of me all along. Marcus's jacket was crumpled on the floor where he'd fallen, and as I bent to pick it up, something heavy shifted in the pocket. My hands trembled as I reached inside and pulled out a small bottle of antifreeze. The label was bright and clear. "Danger. Poison. Keep away from children and pets." I stared at that bottle until my vision blurred, then reached back into the pocket. There was more. A folded piece of paper, creased from being handled repeatedly. I smoothed it out on my kitchen table, and my blood turned to ice. It was a printed article titled, "Helping Elderly Parents Through Pet Loss, a Transition Guide." Someone had highlighted entire sections about how the death of a beloved pet often makes seniors more willing to accept changes in their living situation. There were notes in Marcus's handwriting in the margins. "Usually takes 2 to 3 weeks," and "be supportive, not pushy." My legs gave out. I sank into my kitchen chair, the evidence scattered in front of me like pieces of a horrible puzzle. Princess wandered over and rubbed against my leg, and I realized with crystal clarity that my son had been slowly poisoning my cat for weeks, maybe months. The measuring spoons in my sink suddenly made sense. I'd found them sticky with something sweet-smelling several times, and when I'd asked Marcus about it, he'd said he'd been mixing vitamins into Princess's food. The vet recommended it. He'd lied so smoothly that I'd actually thanked him for being so thoughtful. I walked through my house like a detective, seeing everything with new eyes. The special food containers Marcus brought were in my pantry, and when I opened one, that same sweet smell hit me. Antifreeze. He'd been mixing it into Princess's food, probably just a little bit at first, then more as she built tolerance. In the trash, I found more evidence. Empty bottles of the premium cat food he'd been bringing, but also receipts that showed he'd been buying the cheapest generic brand. The expensive containers had been reused, filled with poisoned food to slowly kill my princess, while I praised him for being so caring. The cruelest part was the timeline. I found a calendar in Marcus's handwriting tucked behind my refrigerator, marking Princess's decline day by day. Week 1, eating less. Week 2, sleeping more. Week 3, Mama worried, mentioned vet. And then, circled in red, Week 4, time to comfort and suggest moving. My son had been documenting my cat's murder like a science experiment. He'd calculated exactly how long it would take for Princess to die, and how long I'd need to grieve before I'd be vulnerable enough to give up my independence. The bottle of antifreeze was nearly empty. Princess should have been dead by now. Marcus had probably come over this morning to administer what he thought would be the final dose, the one that would send me into the grief spiral he'd been orchestrating. Instead, somehow, he'd poisoned himself. God help me. I wasn't sorry. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and despair. I sat in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, Princess's carrier beside me because I couldn't bear to leave her alone, and stared at the white walls while my world rearranged itself around this new, terrible truth. Other families came and went, some crying, some relieved, all of them dealing with accidents and emergencies and the random cruelties of life. But my crisis wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. My own son had orchestrated it, planned it, executed it, with the patience of someone who'd thought through every detail, except the possibility that he might become his own victim. The nurses kept asking if I needed anything. Water, coffee, someone to call. I shook my head each time, because what I needed was to understand how the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers had grown into a man who could slowly poison an innocent animal to manipulate his grieving mother. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. My fingers, steadier now than they'd been in months, began typing. Everything I could remember, every strange comment, every time Marcus had insisted on preparing Princess's food, every phone call he'd intercepted, every suggestion about moving that had felt like gentle concern, but now revealed itself as calculated pressure. March 15th. Marcus brings new cat food. Says it's better for Princess's digestion. She stops eating as much within 2 days. March 22nd. Marcus screens call from Sister Williams. Says I'm too tired for church activities. I never said I was too tired. April 3rd. Princess hides under the bed all day. Marcus seems pleased when I mention it. Suggests maybe she's ready to go, and it might be nature's way. The pattern was so clear now that I wondered how I'd missed it. But grief makes you stupid, makes you grateful for any kindness, any help, any sign that someone cares enough to stay. I'd been so desperate for Marcus's love and support that I'd let him isolate me from my friends, control my pet's care, and plan my future without seeing the manipulation for what it was. A doctor appeared, calling my name. Marcus was stable, awake, asking for me. The antifreeze had caused severe kidney damage, but he'd likely recover. He's very lucky, the doctor said. A few more minutes and we might have lost him. Lucky. I almost laughed at the irony. Marcus was lucky he'd accidentally eaten the poison meant for my cat. Lucky that his own evil plan had saved Princess's life. Lucky that I'd found the evidence before I could convince myself this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Walking down the hospital corridor toward his room, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Not the crushing weight of grief, not the helpless confusion of widowhood, not the desperate gratitude of a woman who thought she needed saving. I felt like myself again. Like Dorothy Washington, the woman who'd taught second grade for 35 years, who'd handled playground bullies and helicopter parents and budget cuts with equal measures of firmness and grace. I'd spent 3 years thinking I was broken, that grief had made me weak, independent, and unable to manage my own life. But standing outside Marcus's hospital room, evidence of his betrayal documented in my phone, I realized that grief hadn't broken me. It had just made me vulnerable to someone who'd seen my pain as an opportunity. The woman who'd raised Marcus, who'd loved him, and sacrificed for him, and trusted him with her heart, that woman had been a victim. But the woman about to walk into his room, the one who'd figured out his plan and gathered evidence and refused to let him destroy what remained of her happiness, she wasn't a victim anymore. She was something much more dangerous. She was a mother who'd been betrayed by her own child. And she was done being anyone's fool. The hospital visit changed everything. But I made sure Marcus didn't know that. I sat by his bedside, held his hand, and played the role of the worried mother perfectly. When he tried to explain why he'd been in my kitchen so early, spinning some story about wanting to surprise me with breakfast, I just nodded and squeezed his fingers. "Don't worry about that now, baby," I said softly. "Just focus on getting better." But inside, I was planning. For the first time in 3 years, my mind felt sharp and clear, like I'd been walking through fog and suddenly stepped into bright sunlight. I had work to do. The first thing I did was take Princess to a different vet across town, one Marcus had never met. Dr. Peterson ran a full toxicology panel and confirmed what I already knew. Princess had significant levels of ethylene glycol in her system, consistent with antifreeze poisoning over several weeks. The amount was decreasing, which meant she was recovering, but the evidence was documented in her medical records now. Someone's been poisoning this cat, Dr. Peterson said grimly. Have you had any pest control work done? Sometimes animals get into antifreeze, accidentally. Not accidentally, I replied, and handed him a copy of the article I'd found in Marcus's pocket. I need you to keep these records safe. I may need them later. Next, I visited my bank and met with the manager, Mrs. Chen, who'd known James and me for decades. I explained that I needed to secure my accounts and assets, that I'd discovered someone close to me had been planning to take advantage of my grief. I'm not ready to name names yet, I said carefully, but I need to make sure no one else can access my money or make decisions about my property. We set up new passwords, removed Marcus from any emergency contacts, and put alerts on all my accounts. The hardest part was the waiting. Marcus would be in the hospital for at least a week, and I needed him to believe nothing had changed. I visited every day, brought him magazines, listened to his complaints about the hospital food. I even brought Princess once, watching his face carefully as she purred in the carrier. She looks better, he said, and I heard the disappointment he tried to hide. Yes, she does, I agreed. Amazing what a little love and care can do. 3 days before his release, I put my plan into motion. I went to the pet store and bought 2 identical bowls, the exact same brand and color as Princess's regular dish. At home, I prepared 2 portions of cat food. One was normal, mixed with Princess's arthritis medication. The other contained the remaining antifreeze from Marcus's bottle, carefully measured to match the concentration I'd found in Princess's blood work. I placed the poison bowl in the kitchen, in the exact spot where Marcus always prepared Princess's food. The safe bowl went in my bedroom, where Princess had been eating since the day I'd found Marcus on my floor. Then I made the call that would seal his fate. Marcus, honey, I'm so worried about Princess, I said, letting my voice shake just enough to sound genuine. She's gotten so much worse since you've been in the hospital. I think she might be dying. I can't bear to watch her suffer, but I can't handle feeding her either. Could you come help me as soon as you get out? I need someone strong to be here with me. The eagerness in his voice was sickening. Of course, Mama. I'll come straight from the hospital. We'll take care of everything. I set up my phone to record, positioned it on the kitchen counter like I was trying to capture Princess's final moments. The angle was perfect to show Marcus preparing the food, his face, his hands, everything he was about to do. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for my son to walk into it. The phone call came at 2:47 a.m., exactly 1 week after I'd set my trap. Marcus's voice was weak, confused, filled with a panic I'd never heard before. Mama, I need you to come to the hospital. Something's wrong. I'm sick again. And the doctors are asking questions about what I ate at your house. I sat up in bed, Princess curled against my side, and felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. What kind of questions, baby? They're saying I was poisoned again. They want to know if you have any pest control products in your house, if there's anything dangerous I might have gotten into. His voice cracked. Mama, I think someone's trying to hurt me. The irony was so perfect, I almost smiled. I'll be right there, Marcus. But I didn't rush. I took my time getting dressed, fed Princess her breakfast from the safe bowl in my bedroom, and even stopped for coffee on the way to the hospital. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Let him feel a fraction of the helplessness he'd planned for me. When I arrived, Marcus looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes sunken. And when he saw me, he grabbed my hand like a drowning man grabbing a life preserver. Mama, I'm scared. The doctors say my kidneys are failing again. They can't understand how I got poisoned twice. He looked directly into my eyes, and I saw the moment when understanding dawned. The color drained from his face. You know, I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, my face as cold and unmoved as stone. Mama, please. I can explain. I was just trying to help you. You were so sad after Daddy died, and that cat was just making things harder. I thought if she passed naturally, you'd be ready to start over, to come live with us where you'd be safe. Safe, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Safe from what, Marcus? From being happy? From having something to love? His excuses tumbled out like water from a broken dam. The house was too big. I was too isolated. Princess was just an animal. I needed family around me. He'd never meant for me to suffer. He'd just wanted what was best for me. You were killing my cat to manipulate me into giving up my home and my independence, I said quietly. You were planning to control my money, my life, my choices. And you call that love? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Marcus whispered, "Are you going to turn me in?" I stood up, smoothing my jacket, and looked down at the sun I'd raised with so much love and pride. I already did. The police have the evidence. Dr. Peterson has Princess's medical records. Your fingerprints are on the antifreeze bottle. And I have a video of you preparing what you thought would be her final meal. His face crumpled. Mama, please, I'm your son. No, I said, heading for the door. My son died the day he decided to poison an innocent animal to break his mother's heart. You're just a stranger who happens to share his name. I walked out and didn't look back. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my garden on a warm Sunday morning, watching Princess stalk a butterfly through the catnip I planted last spring. She's gained back all the weight she lost, and then some. Her coat is shiny, her eyes are bright, and she's returned to her old habit of bringing me presents, usually dead mice she's caught in the basement, which she deposits proudly at my feet like trophies. The house Marcus claimed was too much for me has become a sanctuary. Sister Williams and 3 other church ladies come by every Tuesday for Bible study in my living room. Mrs. Johnson next door brings her little terrier over to play in my backyard. The mailman, Mr. Rodriguez, stops to chat about Princess's latest antics. And Dr. Peterson calls her his miracle cat because her recovery has been so complete. I volunteer at the animal shelter twice a week now, helping other seniors find companionship after loss. Just last month, I matched a widower named George with a one-eyed orange tabby that nobody else wanted. She's got character, I told him, and he's been sending me pictures of them napping together on his porch swing ever since. The trial was harder than I expected. Seeing Marcus in that orange jumpsuit, hearing the prosecutor detail his systematic plan to poison Princess, watching Keisha cry in the gallery while the evidence was presented. It all broke something in me that I'm still learning to heal. The grandchildren don't understand why Grandma Dorothy won't let Daddy come home. Keisha tries to bring them by sometimes, but I can see the judgment in her eyes, the belief that I should have found a way to forgive and forget. But forgiveness and reconciliation are 2 different things. I've forgiven Marcus for my own peace of mind, but I'll never again put myself in a position where someone can use my love against me. The letters he sends from prison sit unopened in a shoebox in my closet. Maybe someday I'll read them, but not today. Today, I'm focused on the life I almost lost, the independence I fought to keep, and the sweet, stubborn cat who saved us both. The financial pressure that drove Marcus to such desperate measures has only gotten worse. His insurance license was revoked. Keisha had to take a second job, and they lost their house. Sometimes I wonder if I should help them, if James would have wanted me to step in for the grandchildren's sake. But then I remember the calendar Marcus kept, marking Princess's decline like a countdown to my surrender, and I know that helping him would only enable another manipulation. I've learned to trust my instincts again. When the man at the grocery store seemed too interested in my shopping habits, I switched stores. When a telemarketer knew too much about my routine, I changed my phone number. When the new neighbor offered to help with my yard work, I politely declined and hired a professional service instead. Grief had made me vulnerable once, but it won't happen again. This morning, Princess is sitting in the exact spot where James used to read his Sunday paper, and I swear I can feel him smiling at us both. She's not just a cat anymore. She's a symbol of what I almost lost and what I refuse to give up. She's proof that love doesn't always come in the package we expect, and that sometimes the most important battles are the ones we fight quietly, with dignity, for the simple right to choose our own happiness. The butterfly princess has been chasing finally lands on my hand, and for just a moment, we're all perfectly still. Then it flies away, and Princess looks at me with those wise green eyes, and I know exactly what she's thinking. We won, didn't we, Mama? Yes, baby girl. We won.